Good. Hello, and welcome to
Hi.
another episode of Spill the Data. This is Timothy Aiken.
And I'm Sidani Daly. Welcome to Spill the Data.
Yes, we are back. I will start this episode off with a brief disclaimer. We're going to try to do our best to repeat the things that you never saw that we recorded already once. We've got these spiffy new backgrounds, but we're going to come across a couple technical difficulties here and there as we get started. My last issue was my audio was crap, and I realized that some people may just be listening to this um, through audio and not watching the video. So without being able to see my lips move, even then it was tough for me to hear what I was saying some of the time. So we're going to try to do our best to get you at least quality audio and video, if not quality content right off the bat. But, you're here for a reason, so hopefully you enjoy it. Today, I think we're going to talk about a little bit more about our, origin stories, why we decided when joining our coding boot camp to go with data science. What if anything, we have learned about the topic that we didn't know before, and um, whether or not it's something we plan on doing for the rest of our lives. So, that can go into who knows what the way we talk. So,
When you first looked at Lambda School, they had like three options, I believe. They had the web development, they had data science, and they had the UX, correct?
yeah, iOS, which was I think like application development for the App Store, since the Apple App Store is opening up for outside developers a lot more. They're training people in that field, or they were. I'm not sure if they still are. And then they have a full stack web designer as an option, and data science as an option. And I looked at them all, and I thought, apps are cool. I could get into that, but then I thought, like, I only like free apps. I don't. I'm not the kind of person that generally subscribes to apps. Like, I feel like once an app is made, it might get some updates, but I couldn't really see myself getting involved with a company that's going to be steadily paying me to make apps all the time, over and over again, different types of apps, updating them. Um, I also thought about web design. I thought, like, that sounds cool. I've never really been so much into the whole, and I do love art. I don't want to mislead anyone there. Like, I definitely like graphic design. I like the idea of using computers to make art, and to making websites look cool and function really well. Look, um, but it still wasn't really my favorite idea. I've always liked the logic part of it. And when I say part of it, I mean part of coding as I knew it. When I started learning to code, I liked that it was just a giant like puzzle. Like each problem was a different type of a puzzle that I needed to try to figure out a new way to solve. And it's like a constant a feeling of innovation. Like, I just pulled that off. Like, when you get every time you get past another logical feat of intellectual mastery, you're just like, yes, I did it. I can't believe it works. I
It
figured
is
it
kind
out.
of
I made it
cool.
work. So and I feel like it's something that'll consistently challenge me, which some people, that then they want to learn something, they want to be great at it, they want to become the best at it, and then just to get paid well for being that. I think in data science, it's one of those fields where to be the best at it means you have to continuously learn the new techniques that are coming out. You have to keep up with the hardware, so it's going to be a constant challenge. It'll keep me engaged, and to be honest, I get bored easily if I don't find new challenges in my day-to-day work and life. So you know and then there's the part where as you see, I'm wearing one of my favorite t-shirts. I'm sitting at home right now, but it's true, I just work here. I like the idea of being able to work remote, and also to wear comfortable clothes to work. You know, I've always seen the computer guy comes into the corporate office and he's the only one that doesn't have to dress up, you know. So like that always kind of thrilled me to see Google meetings, people meeting at Google, and everyone's just wearing casual clothing. You know, they're some of the brightest minds out there, but they don't have to dress it up in a corporate way. So those are a few reasons why I kind of like you know, steer myself into data science. And also the fact that the Lambda's ISA, which is income share agreement, which means they don't charge you anything until you make a certain amount of money. Right now, it's set at 50,000 a year. You have to make at least that much before they start charging. That's true with all three fields, with all the three different fields. So, you know, it wasn't really the money so much, but then when I, you know, already was in my pre-course and I'd already made the decision to go with the more coding and puzzle solving, problem solving, you know, machine learning, natural language processing side of things, like I found someone that showed me a data sheet that showed that data scientists graduating from Lambda school, you know, there was something like 58% of them within 6 months were making six figures. We're making over $100,000 a year. And that just blew my mind. You know, I thought 50,000 was a great increase in pay, you know. Um, and for me, it was $50,000 more than I was making a year. So, you know, that was great. That was good enough. But like to see that I could, you know, the potential, um, you know, that I could actually go from, you know, zero to six figures, you know, was just mind blowing in just a year and a half's time. Um, and that now has been shortened. It's actually down to a 1 year program for part time or a 6 month program for full time. So it's promising. I hope it delivers everything it has to offer. You know, of course, data science as a career choice or even as an educational choice is not um, it's not for everyone. You know, it's not recommended that everyone do it. It's definitely not an easy path. You know, this, but I feel like the people that will succeed at Lambda and in data science in general are those that will, you know, fail or not do well at certain tasks and continue to keep trying. You know, above all things, it's like you have to be not only ready for a challenge, but ready for um, you know, perseverance in the face of failure and adversity and error after error after error that keeps changing to a new error, and you know, you Google it and you figure it out, you think, and then a new error pops up. You know, there's a lot of that going on. So um, yeah, it's not something that's automatic for me, but it's definitely something that I enjoy. I enjoy when I get to learn it and when I get to make it work. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that if you are embarking on this journey, you definitely have to be comfortable with failing and getting back up and trying again and failing again and just keep doing it until you get to where you want to go. And along those along that journey as you're failing, you're actually learning a lot.
Right.
So, I think you should just kind of rethink how you think of failure, think of it more as like, oh, this is just an opportunity for me to learn something new. And, because every time you Google something and you find some new information, you go on Stack Overflow, you find something new,
Right.
it's like something that you have now in your brain, like, oh, I can go back and use that another time for something else. So
Right.
I think it's just failure as a way of opportunity to learn.
It really does. Yeah, it really does help my learning tremendously to have errors come up, because then I not only have to, like you say, go to Google, go to Stack Overflow, go to, you know, the different forums, find the answers, but I have a lot more um, of an understanding of how these different things we're using actually work, rather than just being able to copy what somebody said and try it and hey, it works. Okay, that
Yeah.
didn't teach me anything, you know. But when I have to like really delve in and get why it wasn't working and now why it does work, you know, that helps me learn a lot. And
And
also it helps me learn things like Stack Overflow exists, you know?
right. And like even like 'cause they can only teach you so much. So they might show you one way to do something, But if you go and Google something else, you might like, oh, I could also achieve this similar result this way. So now you have like extra things in your back pocket to pull out if you
Sure.
ever need to, So it's great in that sense. So yes, embrace failure. Just get back up. Just don't stay down. Get back up and keep going.
And
Yeah,
looking back, yeah, looking back at some of those times when I didn't think I was getting it, I was so lost, I didn't understand it. Now, like I look back at the, well, I was like, well, a month before that, I hadn't even heard of this stuff, and now I know what it is. Now I know a little about, what I have an understanding of the subject matter. I might not be an expert in it yet. It's still gonna take some real world practice and, continued learning. But again, that's why I chose coding and data science in general. It's like I want to keep learning. I want to keep building, and hopefully, you know, get involved in a company that can, or even start my own company. To where I can make an impact in a
yeah.
positive way in the world. So
My journey to data science was as like reading through this, like I've never programmed in my life. Like was not even on that track. I'm very much like I'm the type of person like I like to read books and like I like to journal. Like programming was like not on my radar. Like yes, I went online and I used whatever websites I need to use, but I never thought about like I want to do this. This is something I'm
right.
interested in. And just like this the whole pandemic, it gave me some. I mean, obviously, pandemic is horrible, but it did get afford me some time to kind of like reflect and think about like what direction I want to take my life in. And a friend mentioned Lambda School, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll go check it out. And then I was reading through it, and what caught me with data science was the idea of like analyzing data. And I've always thought about like, like when I've watched the news and they show you all these graphs or these, these they quote these things, 50% of this and da da da. And I'm just like, where did he get this information from? Like who's analyzing this? And
Right.
so when I was reading through Lambda and I saw this and I was like, oh, okay. So
Right.
this
Where's
is
the universal stat book with all these numbers in it?
right? This is the behind the scenes way. And I was like, oh, well, if I could be like one of those people that, that voice or that, that alternative voice or different voice, looking at this data and showing what it says or presenting it, I think that would be something great I want to do. And so I started out, like learning program for the first time. I was like, what is Python? Is that a snake? So
Well,
it
it's
was
also a snake. That's true. But
yeah,
yeah, I'm be happy you started with Python. Let me tell you, because I started with Pascal and then C plus and or C plus plus.
right. Yeah. There's
So
so many. I was like,
there's
what?
and the logic is mostly the same, but those languages are so much more strict. Like you have to start a variable off, you have to tell what type it is. There's now Python's just like whatever, we'll figure it out later. Just
Right.
just just
Yeah.
make the variable and we'll assign it to something, and the computer knows what that something is, whether it's character like a string or an integer or a float or whatever. Um, so it's very much more forgiving.
Right.
But
There's
I like how you brought up the visualizations though. Go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
no, it's fine. It's just like it's so funny now, like, for somebody who wasn't like even thinking about this stuff. And when I started, like now I'm like on Medium reading articles and I'm learning about like, SQL and React and HTML and all this other stuff. And I'm just like I feel like I'm just absorbing all this new knowledge. It's just kind of pretty cool. Like it's like a new world opened up for
It's
me.
very much so. It's a brand new world, and it gives us, it gives me like a lot. It's just like you said, it's like an unlimited new world of information and techniques and skills and like that whole behind the curtain, of where all the magic happens, when we talk to our phones now and it just types the words out for us, that's all math.
Right.
It seems crazy to think that way,
Yeah, it is.
but our phones do not understand us whatsoever. They know how to take those sounds and they know how to compare those sounds to, they break them down into a mathematical equation, and then they use that information to predict which words we meant for it to type, and then it returns those words as in the form of text, and that all happens like instantaneously now. So it's like we saw all this happen, but like now I can be part of that. I can
Right.
not only be part of that, but I can be part of those people, like you said, that put the maps on the news with all the different states with the different colors and the percentages, and whether that has to do with election data. We're just coming out of an election year. Anyone watching this in the far out future, yes, we're still amid a pandemic in 2020, and the coming up to the end of 2020 here. And so like I got to see all those global maps too, with the bubbles, the big circles everywhere about where the pandemic is hitting the hardest, and where it's barely hitting. And I liked that
Now,
in my months
sorry not to
before
cut you.
Lambda.
Now we also know how to create that ourselves.
Right, right. I've learned that. It's like that could be me now. I can make those maps.
Yeah.
So that's like it's fun, and it's fun and exciting, because I feel like I know not only can I give something meaningful to something that I took value from. Like I those type of visual representations of data, um, they do a lot to telling me a story. So now I can be like, okay, well, that works so well for me. Let me try to help visualize some other data so that people can learn the story behind these numbers too. You know, and hopefully that's what we'll be getting into a little bit more in these broadcasts. We decided we'd do a couple episodes just talking about, since we are just starting out, our starting out journey in data science, and then we're going to delve deeper into some data and exactly what stories they tell. So
So we'll look up for a name of spilling the data.
yeah,
I think I say data and you say
I
data,
noticed that. Yeah, you say data, I say data. It's okay.
right?
Like I
You know,
think
I was
when I
thinking
think
about.
data, I think the character on Star Trek: The Next Generation. So
Gotcha.
I think
I was
data
actually
is
thinking about like how the rapidness of technology, like the rapid pace of technology. Because I remember like even when I was in school, like we had like floppy disks, like they don't know what floppy disks are anymore, and just like just to be part of that like rapid space and like just constantly creating and pushing the envelope, I think is gonna be pretty cool.
yeah, floppy disks for what, like 512 megabytes
Right.
or something. Like no, I mean they might have been 512 kilobytes, like half a megabyte, which
Ridiculous.
is like a megabyte. If you guys don't know, is 1,024th of a gigabyte. Like it's so ridiculously small. You could fit like a text document or five on there.
And there was
Like
a point where cell phones couldn't even text. Remember that?
right now we've got 8 gigabytes of RAM in our phone.
Like a mini computer walking around. It's
Right.
insane.
256 gigabytes of hard drive space. My first desktop had 3 gigs of hard drive on it, and it wasn't even mine. It was like my parents. So
Yeah.
like, wow, we've come a
The
long
computers
way
had
since
those
the days of
big backs. It was like this huge computer. Now it's like a
enormous, heavy, loud, hot machines. Where you
remember
download a
dial up?
picture and it just do this for like 10 minutes before the whole picture would show up on the website, and dial up. Oh my God. Yeah, yeah, we're old. So
Oh, really dating ourselves.
nah, it's all good. But yeah, I love the fact that I've gotten to see it all grow, and it's growing exponentially. And I jumped right back on right before it's too late, before the computers take over the whole uh, the whole world as we know it. No, not to be cryptic about it, but computers are really we're gonna be using computing for a lot of our devices. Our cars. It's going to come into the machines that do farming. It's going to come into delivery drones. It's going to be eventually a lot of things in life will be automated, and that just means the demand for data scientists to help work on these machine learning issues that will come with all these new automations is only going to grow. So that's another thing that really helped me decide I wanted to join data science as a career, choices, I know that like job security is 100%. Like there are more job openings for data science than there are data scientists for those jobs. So I know. I mean, it's then again. To be fair, there are even more job openings for web developers. You know, probably about 4 times as many, I think, in the U.S. than for data scientists. So whatever your goal is, if you decide to get into coding, I would recommend it myself. If you like, I won't even say if you like math and science. You don't even have to. So many people from different backgrounds that maybe didn't even do well in school, they get into computer coding and they're like, oh, well, this is cool. This is fun, and this makes sense. It's just such a different um, class of people. Like, it's not just academics that do well in it. It's not, just people that have life experience that do well in it. Like, it's a really what's the word I'm looking for? Diverse group.
Right. I think why it works for wherever your background is, wherever you're coming from, is because it's about like just having that knack to like think on your feet and solve problems and find the answers. Like it's not like you need to go read a textbook. It's not very traditional in that sense. It's like, oh, do you have what it takes to like think on your feet, think fast, problem solve, you know, go out, look for information that you need to gather. So I feel like if you have like whatever skill set you have, if you're coming from a place where like every day you have to wake up and think about like how I'm going to make it out through this day, bringing that kind of mindset into like programming is pretty good, because that's what you do every day. You're thinking about, how do I solve this? How do I fix this? How do I make this work? So I think that's why it works for whatever your background is, because it's not traditional in that sense. It's more about just like thinking on your feet, and the answers are there for you at your fingertips. Just got to know how to find it.
Yeah, very true.
So yeah, I think that's the draw.
Yeah, if you've ever done anything, on or off the books that you had to be creative to succeed in, I'm
Yes.
just saying you will probably excel in Python coding in general, or coding boot camps. Because like you said, every time I open a new assignment for school, or get started with a brand new project, I'm just like, oh, here we go. Like, I don't have any idea what I'm doing. And then it's the ball starts rolling and the things start working, and you get every little step of the way. I find this new encouragement, like, yes, I did it. I did it again. I'm a genius. Like, um, when really all I did was a few Google searches and, like maybe rewatch some old lectures and things that there's videos on. I mean, we all know this by now. If you're not watching this on YouTube, then you should probably learn that YouTube has all information out there pretty
Oh
much.
my God, everything. Yes.
Find it. So um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good. I think it's a good um, option for anyone to try.
Right.
Especially now that you can get involved with these programs that if you don't ever get a job doing it, you never pay.
Right.
So it's not going to hurt you to gain that knowledge anyways.
Yeah.
Whereas,
And I think what you touched on also about like the culture of it, like the more like relaxed culture, like if you're a little rough around the edges and you like to wear jeans and t-shirts to work, then come right in. Like
right,
it's not like that stuffy, you have to wear a suit and say the right things at the right time. You kind of get the option to kind of like just be yourself and just focus on programming, doing what you do. So that's nice. It kind of cuts out some of the bureaucracy a little bit, I feel like.
yeah, it could be true. I
Yeah.
mean, um, so let's talk about the articles that we started. I know that you did
Yeah.
some really couple cool articles, some heavy hitting articles, maybe that were against the recommendation of our
Yeah.
student leads, but you pulled them off well.
Yeah.
I liked your Medium articles. So.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool. So, you're in this data science program and you're learning all these codes, but it's like, okay, what do you do with all this? And so we get to create these projects in Lambda and write an article about them. So my first project was analyzing some data from New York City, particularly about use of excessive police force. And so it was pretty cool that you could just Google and go on the state website or the city website and find all this information, which I don't think I'd ever would have looked up if I wasn't like in this course and they're asking us to do this.
Right, sure, sure.
Yeah.
You never know that
So
was available, that you could like find this.
right, like, oh, this is out there, like it's right here. So went and got that and just like, analyzed the data, cleaned it up, and looked at how I was looking at the use of police force in New York City, and this was right about the time that the horrible incident happened with George Floyd's murder, and everybody there's protests across the country, and there's a lot of rhetoric in the news, and so I just kind of wanted to delve into that, like see like how badly are the police behaving, and my data actually was kind of the opposite. It kind of proved that they weren't behaving that badly, um, because there were like lots of like laws and things in place, so they actually had decreased the use of excessive police force. But Tim, you sent me something about saying that sometimes they don't report it, so I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah. That's another example. Like,
right, another way of like screwing up the data if you're not reporting it, or if whoever is inputting the data is not importing it properly. Like there's so many ways to misinterpret or interpret data depending
yeah.
on you
When your
know
data says, less and less reported cases of police violence have shown up, that sounds great. It looks good for the news and everything. It's like, the past 3 years, the amount of reported cases of police violence has decreased. But then you find out that like only 50% of the agencies are reporting now, so are reporting what they found or something like. I don't know the numbers. Don't quote
right.
me on that. But so yeah, it's that's something. That's another reason I wanted to get involved with data science and kind of be behind the scenes and get an opportunity to look at some of the stuff before it's given to us in the way that whatever um, person that's behind it, whatever their motivation is, if they want to skew the data one way or another, they can use the same data to tell two different stories in most cases.
That's why I think it's so important for people to like get involved, especially like people of color or women, so that way you have a voice in the information that's
Sure.
being presented, like let's get your perspective. Because if you only have a certain demographic of people in this field, what's presented is going to be very skewed or biased to what, unconsciously or consciously based on what they know. So I think it's important for many different people of all backgrounds to get involved. So that way representation is key, and represented in the things that are presented to the population as a whole.
Right. I do like the fact that, like as we are data scientists, we don't go in. We might go into a project thinking, this is something I want to expose the numbers behind, but we might come out on the other end going, okay, well, my original hypothesis was not correct. According to the data, it actually, shows this, and all we really have to go by is, you know, what's been provided.
Right.
Like I tried to go into my first Medium, or my first project for Medium. I did a Medium blog post about the mobility data in Maryland. Um, Specifically, I had to kind of narrow it down because the United States as a whole was very difficult to generalize on. And I thought maybe if I just did Maryland, which is, I live in Baltimore, so that way I could try to compare it to states that weren't hit as hard, and see if the mobility people, if all the shutdowns actually made a difference in the spread of the virus, or not. And I came to find out that, there was really no way to prove one way or another whether the shutdowns helped or not. Because, the numbers were decreasing, things were dying off. But I mean, in the course of most viruses, if there's a big surge of it, eventually it's going to fade away. So I'm looking at it like that, like, okay, maybe I should check with in worldwide. Is that I was like, talk to a couple of the people in my cohort, and they were like, well, check Switzerland's data. And, not to my surprise, because I had seen this already, like Google has mobility globally, global mobility data available. They don't, of course, attach anyone's name to it or whatever, but you get to see the percentages of how much time, the difference in the baseline of the percentage of how much time people spent at home, or people spent at work, or people spent in parks, or people spent in entertainment establishments like movies and bars and things like that. So um, I checked Switzerland because they didn't have government mandates to shut down. So I was like, okay, that'd be great. That's a good control group. I'll just use the Swiss data versus our data and see how much, their deaths and cases changed compared to how much our deaths and cases changed, and be like, see, they just did the thing, their normal thing, and it still followed the same path. But when I got there, I came to find out after visualizing a bunch of the data that the Swiss people are just smarter than Americans. I say that because
They
they
like
didn't
listen
need
to
their government
science,
to shut them
common
down.
sense.
Right. They're like, oh, we believe in science. It's okay. We don't have to trust our government to know to stay
Right.
home, wash our hands, and and not go to work for a little while. So
Yeah.
so they,
It's so funny. I
they
read
did
like
it
these little
anyway.
things and they're just like, wash hands. And I'm just like, really? You gotta tell us that? Okay, got
Yeah.
it.
Right, right. It takes a global pandemic for us
Yeah.
to learn to wash our hands again.
So funny. You mentioned Google and how they like track mobility, and it's like fascinating, but at the same time kind of scary. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, like they're really like tapping into us, their lives. It's,
Yeah, they showed some graphics once. I say they because I don't know the source of this, but I saw a video. Somebody was giving a presentation that showed the graphics of everyone that was in um, Tampa, Florida area. I think like down on the Florida beaches during a certain event, and then their mobile, like where they went throughout the country. And I'm like, okay, so even if you don't know who these people are, you know where they slept
right,
all week, so you kind of do know who they are. Like,
right,
you might not attach a name to these IP addresses or whatever it is, and
yeah.
but that data is out there. The data is
Yes,
out
and I'm
there.
sure if you try hard enough, you probably could track down exactly who that person
Oh,
is.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. We know if who visits your Facebook page the most, it's you.
right,
So whichever way you want to look at it, of course there is tracking out there. I don't really feel like there's any malintent to it, as long as you consider targeted advertising not malicious. You know, I personally don't like targeted advertising generally. Because after I bought something, I don't need to see 30 ads for the same thing
right.
anymore. But to be fair, I wouldn't have found Lambda School without targeted advertising. So
There you go.
sometimes it is beneficial. I didn't know like this is something I didn't know existed that now I'm a part of, and I'm glad 100% that I found it. So uh, sometimes it's good, sometimes it is like I don't know how I feel about it sometimes, just
Yeah,
because everyone that lives near me around my age group has searched, started typing this in Google, and that's the rest of what they wanted to find. I
right.
don't necessarily feel like it should be suggested to us what we want to look for on the internet.
Right. I know with my friends and I, the common thing we talk about all the time is like, oh my gosh, I was just talking about this and now there's an ad for it on my phone, and we're just like, how did they know? So there's a lot of conspiracy theorists around me right now.
Oh, that one's
They're
not a
listening.
theory. Yeah, look that guy up too. I don't know. I don't want to send too many people too many YouTube searches, but there's a guy. If you just look up, targeted ads by voice or something. This guy talks about he holds up a picture and or like he wrote something on a piece of paper and holds it up and it says the subject that he's going to talk about, and he doesn't talk about it. He opens up he doesn't say anything out loud, but then he opens up a website and he looks at, shows you the ads on that site. He closes the browser out completely. Nothing's open on his computer. Cameras, on because it's recording this YouTube video, but whatever. Um, so he starts talking about dog toys. He starts talking about a specific brand of dog toys and how he definitely thinks, he should get his dog one of those red rubber bones from the specific brand of dog toys. He goes, opens up the browser again, goes back to the exact same site, and don't you know, on the sidebar, there's like red dog toys by that brand being advertised. His mind was blown. I was like, I got a little chills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, it's amazing now what when you give your phone permission to, to record your audio and video, and
Absolutely.
you think, well, yeah, I won't be able to be in a Zoom meeting if I don't give it permission to use my audio and video.
Right.
But you don't necessarily recognize that now that you've given it permission, you haven't limited that permission um, necessarily to only when you're using the app. So depending on the app, uh, one more example is a guy was walking around showing, what his phone sees in real time, and was drawing boxes around everything in his house. It'd say TV, TV, TV on his computer screens and remote control, ashtray, whatever, as he walked around in real time. It's just draw. It was doing a great job of quickly and probably even more effectively than a human could have um, cataloged everything that was coming into the view of his camera. So I mean, that sort of thing is amazing
Yeah.
and it's impressive, and I like that it's possible. Um, what is going to be done with that data? I want to know.
Right. Exactly. That's why I'm like, I want to be on
So
the other side. I want to know
right,
what's happening with this data.
right. So that's one of my goals too, is to be one of those people that are still have
In the know.
in the know. Like, yeah, I'm a and shout out Edward Snowden. You know what I mean? Like make sure. Like I hope that doesn't get me put on any cancellation lists or watch lists. But I mean, I really feel like it was an important thing that treasonous foul. No, I'm just kidding. But that he did, like that he released that information, and that we were allowed to find out that there was nothing stopping anyone from any time um, that had the right applications
Right.
from accessing our cameras and microphones on our phones.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's impossible anymore, or at all, but I feel like has because the attention has been brought to it, there's a little bit more accountability of how these things are being used and for what.
Right. Yeah. And I think
Who
just,
knows?
being in a space and like being able to have just some inclination or some knowledge about how these things are done kind of gives you like a little edge in some way,
Sure.
instead of being just completely oblivious to it all, which is probably nice too.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean that still doesn't make me the kind of person that puts a piece of tape over all my cameras and throws my SIM card. And, I'm not going to go smashing my phone. I'm not going to say the type of phone I have because it likes to hear its name and start and come right alive. But I have a Pixel. I can say that I got a Pixel, and
Yeah.
it's listening at all times. I know this. I know this. I don't. It doesn't bother me that all of the data about me is stored in some vault somewhere. And I don't even mean vault. It's just like it's stored on some drive somewhere.
Somewhere. Yeah.
Um, and I know that because I was listening to my voice history one time, my voice request history, however you want to call it, voice assistant history. You can go on your Google account and you can open that up and listen. And I was noticing that it says, you say okay, G word, and and then you ask the question, right? So I noticed when I listened to this thing that I heard the okay Google button. There it goes. And I'm like, wait a minute. If I heard that part, that means it takes the audio clip from what after I say it goes, it rewinds the audio clip back to a certain time, copies that part, saves that part, puts it in the section that is now in an area that I can access it and listen to it back. But that means for it to have the functionality to do that, it must be recording at all
Right.
times. So, I don't know. I guess I have mixed emotions about it. I feel like it can become um, it can become more and more abusive if we allow it to, So it's very
Right.
important that we have people that are stepping up their game alongside of the people that are trying to hack in, get everyone's personal information, advertise to them. I don't want to
Um,
be in virtual reality and see pop-ups everywhere. Like I don't. That's
right.
not a goal.
And I know there's a movement right now in the data science program about like thinking about the ethics behind like collecting data and how that data is used and presented and manipulated and analyzed. So I think there are people who are in this space who are, being conscientious and trying to make sure that they're approaching things from an ethical standpoint. But I think also like, with everything, it's all relative, right? Like it depends on like what's your view of ethics, like what's your ethics. So like that's why I think it's so important for people to get involved and be a part of this process
Yeah,
because
especially those that don't.
yeah,
The conspiracy theorist type. Get
right.
involved. Don't
Get in here.
don't just scream about it. Come on
Right.
in. Like make sure and get real information. You know,
Right.
not everything you read on the internet is true. I'm sorry. I mean,
Facts. Yeah, but it's important to have like checks and balances, because as you said, like this is something that could be invasive and could be abused.
right.
So it's important to have those things in place where people do benefit from, these technologies and it does afford some kind of luxury, but at what cost, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
And the cost is basically our privacy. So it's a matter of, um, you know, how much of our privacy um, is going to need to remain private later on in life.
Right.
Apparently people have phones and still get away with horrendous acts of violence, so they can't be watching everyone. Like it's not to that level yet.
Right.
Um, you know, but yeah, quantum computing is coming. You know, come join the light side. I hate to say it like that, but like I want to see that the more people out there that represent the regular people that
Right.
that have um, that don't want to see any sort of complete and total control by the
Tech, tech
yes,
force.
whatever you want to call
I don't know what you call
it,
them.
whatever you want to
But,
call
I
it,
was
the
thinking like,
they, the mystical
right.
they.
But playing the devil advocate here, like we're also kind of complicit because like we're Instagram posting everything, this is where we are, and this is what we're doing, or we're on
Sure.
Facebook posting or Snapchat or TikTok, or whatever we're doing. So we're putting out a lot of content about ourselves. So sometimes it's like, do you really want privacy if you're like just, spewing all this information about your personal life and etc. So I think, we have to hold ourselves accountable too if we're gonna
Sure.
push for these things.
Yeah, I mean, and I had to make the decision a few years ago, and it was either go completely off the grid, erase all digital evidence that I exist, live in the woods, never own an electronic device. I'm like, nah, I think I'm just gonna go side with Google.
We're gonna like wear like a foil hat.
Yeah, right. So I mean, there are people that still won't put their picture on their Facebook accounts, and I'm starting to understand why. Like I had Google um gave me options. It was like, okay, pick which one of these pictures is you. And then I was like, all right, and it was like, now you can search for yourself in all of your photos. And it
Right.
correctly identified every single photo I had, profile, side, dark, light, whatever that had my face in it. And, while impressive, it's also like, okay, where does it go? Where does
Right.
it go if it gets to be a big brother state? And that's what we're all trying to avoid is the Orwellian nightmare. But we haven't had the history to have to deal with that sort of oppression, but we have had the literature to know what I mean when I say Orwellian.
Right.
1984 has come and gone. It's been 40 years almost, so I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
We just
And
have to keep
some
it up.
people have been affected. Some people have lost their jobs, their livelihood, just from like a post or a tweet
For
or
sure. Yeah.
some people are being affected.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good point too.
Yeah.
It's
And it's so people have been like abusing it too. Like on Twitter, some people get death threats, and a lot of women get targeted, especially if you speak out against certain things. You're getting death threats and you're getting physical threats, and you know, it's people find where you live. It gets really pervasive.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a happy medium, I feel like.
Yes.
You know. I'm not gonna hide, but at the same time, I don't think anyone should go in not knowing what they're I feel like it shouldn't be just like a thing that happens without our knowledge.
Right.
That's where I'm at. Like I also don't feel like if anyone has to worry about it, like, there's no drone that's going to be coming, searching, and watching our every move. If we go missing, it's not like they're just going to be able to find us on other people's cameras and phones. If you want to hide yourself, you can probably still manage to do that. We simply don't have the manpower to watch everybody at all times. It would take another
Not yet.
person. Yeah, it would take another person for everyone that exists in order to do so. Um, but there are going to be more and more complex machine learning and artificial intelligence that do come up and exist in the future that we'll be able to do just that. We'll be able to watch multiple.
Machine learning is pretty cool. If you can figure out like how it works and what goes into building that, I think that's like pretty cool. It's like it's complex but amazing.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really is. And I mean, I guess we could talk a little about that. I did my second medium. Oh, and I should also say I want to give a shout out to Amin Azad, who recommended for my first article that I submit my article to an online publication with Medium, and that one was denied, and the subsequent last two articles I made also were denied. But in doing those submissions, it encouraged me to try to increase like the quality of my writing, the amount of um, sources I cited, to make sure all my pictures I used were mine or I had permission to. And it made me better. The second time around, I was automatically better, or from doing so, I tried that I was better enough that I got the attention of two other online publications. So now I'm writer for those two online magazines through Medium, called The Innovation, and one's called Analytics Vidya. And now, since my third article I published from Medium, I found another publication that wanted me to write for them called Data Driven Investor. So I'm now the proud writer of three online magazines,
Awesome.
just from, thanks. But just,
Yeah.
just from, trying it and
Right.
trying to increase, the quality of my work over time. My second
Yeah.
one was about machine learning. That's where I was going.
Yeah. I
Uh,
just right 1 second before you get there, just want to
sure.
give a shout out to Amin. Not only did he push us to like post on Medium and get publications with other organizations on Medium.
Sure.
He was also like very instrumental, I feel like, in like encouraging us and making sure that we like stayed on track. But there were times where like I'm like, oh my God, I'm done with this. And he's like, no, you got this, you can do this. And so not only pushing us to be our best selves and introducing us to Medium and getting publication, but just also just encourage us in general. So big shout out to him.
Yeah, no doubt. And he is a proud writer of Towards Data Science. So I won't say what. So if you look for admin Azad, you will find him there. But yeah, my second article though, like I said, I shined it up really well. I made it about something that I didn't have any prior knowledge of the subject. So it really let me delve into something new and learn something new. It's about predicting pulsar stars in the galaxy and whether or not these different candidates that were, in this data set were pulsars or not. So I trained a machine learning model with the information on about 70% of the data um, labeled whether or not it was a pulsar. So then we show these machine learning models. We train them on this data with the label, the correct label, so they know the answer. So when it has this, 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 and this, it is. When it has this, 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 but not that, it isn't. You know, or whatever, whichever combinations of different features, um, then it'll make a prediction. So then we tested on a validation set, which is about 20% of our data, you know, and see what our quality, you know, see how well the models do on data it hasn't seen yet. So I was able to create the model, create a very simple machine learning algorithm called linear regression. I say very simple, but you know, still describing it to you and explaining how it works might take a drawing or two. Um, but you know, I was able to train it on that. I got a specific validation accuracy score off my validation set. I then tried to increase that accuracy by trying different types. Like, you know, then we went to random forest classifier. I tried an XG boost classifier, which is an extreme gradient boost classifier. You know, I eventually found which one was the best, and then I tweaked the hyperparameters. I made the model as good as absolutely I could get it to be. You know, I beat a couple of the scores that I saw out there of other data scientists that have tried with the same data. You know, so it's like all not only a learning experience, but also just like a fun like challenge to try to pit myself against, you know, the best that I could find, or
Right.
and see that, wow, I'm pulling this off in ways that I didn't expect. You know, I'm doing it, um, and only from what I've learned in a short period of time, just from actually trying to apply myself to these things. So like, so I collected all this data, collected all the information. I shared the notebook. I made some cool pictures, you know, a couple little quick funny quips in there, and I published it on Medium. And within a day, I got Analytics Media came and asked if I wanted to write for them, along with the innovation. So I've got it published with, and it was on the innovation for a while. I had to remove it so that I could publish it with Analytics Media because they are more data science, um, you know, that's more their topic. The more
Right.
their reader group or their audience is data science related. So I felt like
Yeah.
that was a good permanent home for it.
Yeah.
But
For me,
yeah, it was a fun experience, you know.
nice. I think for me, for my second project, my topic was a little heavy. It was about like, exploitation of, the most underprivileged, underclassed, poverty ridden sector of our population or global population. But the cool thing was that I was able to take the machine learning and really like developed an algorithm to help us figure out like the people who are most susceptible to being exploited or taken from their homes, etc., and who is more likely to do the exploitation. So like you could definitely go very analytical with it and do cool things, and but you can also use it in a social aspect to help solve like social problems or help inform you more about social issues. And so I think for me, that's kind of the road I've taken as far as like how am I using the knowledge I'm learning from this program. Like I'm really trying to analyze social issues, and you never think that you can use these things or they correlate in any way, but they do, and they can be very insightful and helpful. So
Yeah, because you could
yeah,
take that information and then you can decide where you should target education in these areas. You know, like
exactly. Yeah.
what age children, what age should you start telling children about, you know, besides just don't talk to strangers, never take candy from someone
Right.
you don't know, you know, you want to start telling them about like, okay, you're becoming a teenager soon. You should probably always make sure you walk with somebody,
Right.
or you know, you're not in anywhere in any of these areas without some friends nearby,
Right.
because you know you don't want to scare kids too early, but at the same time
Right.
you don't want to coming up thinking everything's great and they're, you
Right.
know, they're like,
Like, I mean, you don't want to
human
be that
trafficking is
one
a
person
thing, you know,
that,
right.
yeah, yeah,
It's a hard hitting subject, but it's
yeah.
the sort of thing that needs to be discussed and learned about. We can't just ignore it and it'll go away. That's
And
just
what fascinated me or, in on the best way, is that when I was looking into the subject, like there really wasn't a very uniform way of recording this information or, collecting this data. So I was like, oh, that's, like there was so many, because the wording was so vague, because
Right.
they don't come out and say, sometimes they don't come out and say, like the terminology that's like probably would be applied. They like use all this like, the underage child was, exploiting. I'm like, well, no, that child was like kidnapped and like, abused. Like, can we just use direct terms? So it was very interesting trying to gather the data to even do this project because the language was just so vague. I had to do so much cleaning of the data and, like compressing of columns because they had all these different terminology for the same exact thing. So it was just like,
Hmm.
this is insane.
Yeah, it's a large portion of data science that's one thing I didn't know about data science coming into the field. Like I figured, you got numbers and you gave it to the computer and the computer spits out these awesome little charts, and, I didn't know how it worked that you spend probably a good 80% of your time um, cleaning and wrangling the data, making sure that it's in a format that you can make, you can turn into clean mathematical equations for the computer to actually, crunch the data into numbers, and that's because, like you said, there's SQL involved sometimes. There's 10 different people
Yes.
entering in the data. So somebody gave it into capital S and somebody
Right.
could have, not capitalized to put a space in it. There's sometimes you'll find that there's 10 different columns for the same
Mhm.
information. So you got to do a little bit of, well, a whole lot of work sometimes to get the data in format in a way that your results are actually valid and accurate. Um,
Right.
so, like, hopefully, we can claim to be on the team of trying to make sure that that happens correctly and
Right.
precisely, and nothing's left out. I hope to get involved with a company that has that as a value. Where we're not here to sugarcoat like the results. We want to actually find out the truth. So, and if not, then I'll not be there very long. So.
Yeah, and there's like, there's so many room. I mean, there's quite a bit of room for human error, like there's leakage, um, over, under. So
Yeah.
there's so many things there that, it's important. I think just as I said before, just have checks and balances. Like if you do your work, hopefully you're on a team, somebody else is checking your work, and you guys are really trying to make something great and concise and accurate.
Yeah, and I mean, leakage in this example isn't like like giving away secrets. It's actually, well, in a way, it is like it's considered a way that a machine learning model knows something it shouldn't know yet. You're giving it information like, let's say you want to find out if a disease, how often a disease is fatal when these certain symptoms are hit or these certain um, you know, vital signs are happening, whether or not to think they should go into intensive care. Well, you don't want to feed your machine learning model a column that explains how often people died from the disease, because every time it sees that, it's going to say, well, yeah, they should have went into intensive care. So you don't want to give it any information that is going to skew the data completely one way or another. You want to give it kind of more of a broad. Um, you want it to perform better with unseen data. You don't want to just fit it to just the data that it has and the labels that it has. So it's a challenge. There's definitely a trade-off, between accuracy and overfitting, underfitting. Like you said, and avoiding leakage happening. So it's like if you train a model and it comes out 99% the first try, you're like, okay, what did I do wrong?
Right. Yeah.
But cool. I think we've kind of we've gotten this subject matter out pretty well today. I think we can call it a day. I see, life is happening over there, as it will be soon here too. So, unless that you have anything else to say.
No, I think this was great. I love how like we start off on one topic and it just kind of like developed up into something else. I think it's great because there's so much to talk about
They're
in
really
this field. So hopefully we'll get back to some other stuff that we might have glossed over a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, eventually, we'll probably touch back on all these subjects a little bit more in detail. You know, if there's anything that you would like to see us discuss, please leave it in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube. Also, please, of course, we got to do the obligatory like, subscribe, share, comment. Become a supporter, whichever way you found us. Please help others to find us as well. So, like, please share. Um, and I appreciate your time. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Spill the Data.
Build the data. Thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye.
I'm Sidani Daly with
And I'm Timothy A.
Bye guys.
Bye bye.